organizing your astronomy gear on episode 482 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody. It's for everybody who enjoys going out under the stars. And in the last episode, Shane, I had referenced that I was using my 10 millimeter XW in a Barlow because I couldn't find my 5 millimeter XW, which I actually had with me in the observatory because I'm disorganized. so, so I thought maybe we would chat about that, but maybe first we'll check in with you and see if you have any new equipment or new to you equipment or any gear updates on your end.
No, nothing over here.
All right. So anything catching your eye these days that you were telling me about a 14-inch telescope at an astronomy store you might buy.
Oh, I'm not buying. Nope. No, I really there's nothing catching my eye right now. I shouldn't say that. I guess there is a Takahashi 120 TSA
Ooh,
available
yes.
in Canada for a very good price, and I could make arrangements for the transaction to take place, but I don't need a 102 and a 120. So if I'm getting the 120, that
Yeah.
means I'm selling the 102, which isn't a big deal. Like, I can do that. But last episode we were talking about the 90 millimeter Coronado Etalon that I have.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
won't fit on the 120. So then there's also that part of
No.
this thing, right? It's
Could
like, well, geez, all my stuff is so intertwined now.
couldn't you get a custom adapter or something?
Oh, I'm sure anything's
Oh,
possible. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can do it. You can do it. I would just like to see you in that 120
Yeah, the
because
120 would be nice. Although when I had the Skywatcher 120, it didn't knock my socks off for the difference between that and the 102. It was there. It
Sure.
was noticeable,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like, I need to have a 120. That wasn't part of it. And, the Skywatcher, I was not able to use my bino viewer natively. So that's why I jettisoned that one.
Yeah.
From what I
Yeah.
understand with the TSA 120, you can, similar to the TSA 102, you can use the Bino Viewer natively there.
Yeah.
So anyway, lightly considering that, but I doubt I'll make the move. So other than that, really nothing. I'm quite content. I have more than enough telescope gear than one person should probably have.
Well, here I did a comparison of these are some of my oldest eyepieces and I know you borrowed one. I think you borrowed one of these, which was the Pentax 5.1 millimeter XO.
Yes. Yeah, I borrowed that, and I used to own one myself.
Yeah, and I will always keep it because it's just a rare eyepiece, and I do like the Pentax so much.
Mhm.
And I was borrowing the 10 millimeter XW, and anyway, it gives slightly more power, but really indifferent. You can see a difference with the Pentax 5.1. It's there. It
Mhm.
just things look more solid through it. But wow, is that eye relief ever tight? And you're gonna laugh at this, and I'm sure lots of listeners will too, but I was really worried because I was looking through it and I could see, how we weren't recording, but I was telling you I was kind of testing like the light plumes or the heat plumes on the
Mm.
7-inch,
Mhm.
and I was remarking how it didn't really seem to have any trouble cooling. Like, it seems to cool just as fast as my other much smaller refractors, even though it's a much larger scope. But they've designed that into it with an extra large tube. Anyway, so I was comparing these, and there's like this huge blob when I'm looking in the eyepiece, and I'm like, oh, what is this? This is how I started comparing, because I put the 5.1 in, and then I'm like, what is that? Is that on the telescope? Because of course you think disaster, mold is growing on the telescope so badly that it's like blotching out Jupiter. So I tried the 10-inch or the 10 millimeter XW, put that in, it's gone. I'm like, phew. Then I put the 5 back in, I rotate it, I can see it, and it wasn't totally dark. And I'm looking at it, like, what's going on with this? So I walk over, turn on a light, and I can't really see anything. I'm assuming it's underneath. And I look at the And you got to imagine that this eyepiece only has what, like about a 39-degree field of view or something.
Yeah, it's pretty narrow.
There is this speck of dust. I mean, it was a good sized speck of dust, but it was still just a little speck of dust. And I just went, blew it off and put it back in. It was gone. But it
Mm.
like took up a significant portion of the field that yeah, it was kind of shocking. But yeah, that's a nice eyepiece. But boy, I find it tough to look in compared to something like the 10 millimeter XW. And I got to say, I spent a lot of time observing with the 10 millimeter XW, both at 10 millimeters as well as Barlow at 5, because I couldn't find my 5 millimeter. And even though it's one of my oldest eyepieces, I've owned it now for, gonna say, 15 years, something like that, give or take. And it is still like one of my favorite, if not my favorite, higher power flexible eyepiece. It Barlows superbly well. It's small, like I can cap it up, put it in my pocket, and you know it's there, but it's not too inconvenient. And the light throughput on it is only outdone by a 4 element special high throughput 5 millimeter XO, which they only made 10 of or whatever it was. So anyway, I just thought you would enjoy that little comparison.
Yeah, very cool.
So I'm trying to organize my gear, Shane, and I've got a whole pile of these gear bags,
Hmm.
and I don't mean I have two or three. I mean, I have like six or seven, maybe 10.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's too much, no matter
Hmm.
how much one might like gear bags. So I bought some of those like a plastic, what do you call it, storage thing on casters. It has some thin drawers up top, which I put most of the Pentax XWs in now, and then it has some bigger drawers towards the bottom. I put my finder scope in one at a funny angle, but it doesn't really fit that well. So I'm just trying to figure out how to best organize all this stuff in there because I'm slowly hauling the stuff up. I realize there's a lot of the problem with the astronomy gear. It's a lot of sort of square pegs and round holes, so to speak. Some of it's not that big. It's like my finder scope is tiny. It's just awkwardly sized. Unless I take it apart, I don't want to take it apart. Like you know. But anyway, don't know what your thoughts are on how to get your stuff organized. How do you have your stuff organized, Shane? Maybe we'll start there.
Well, yeah, I can certainly get into it. I don't know if it matches your use case because mine is all about like sort of portability and,
Mm,
whether it's just walking out into the backyard and hauling my gear or coming to your house or, some other location. So for me, it's a little bit modular. Like I have a
mm,
number of hard plastic cases, like either the Nanook brand or Pelican. And
hmm
depending what I'm doing, sort of dictates which case I'm grabbing. So, like, I've got one case that is my 2-inch or sort of wide field eyepieces. So, the Panoptic, the 41 Pan, the 31 Nagler, 30 UFF, and there's a couple other wide field eyepieces in there. That's all one case. So,
mm,
if I want to do that type of observing, I just grab that and away I go. Then I have another sort of general purpose case that I would put my bino viewer in, finders, filters, that type of stuff. And this case has, in fact, both cases, the 2-inch or the wide field eyepiece case and the sort of accessories case that holds my bino viewer. Um, they all have like foam padding that's adjustable using Velcro, and you can customize it for any size of gear. And I kind of like that because it allows you to change out the sort of the layout of it, so it can
hmm
accommodate anything you want to put in there. And then I also have lid organizers that help to just like contain kind of miscellaneous objects that maybe you don't use all of the time. So
hmm
filters, maybe a lens brush, maybe your flashlight, that type of stuff.
hmm
So those are two cases. And then I have a third case, which is my bino viewing pairs, like my eyepiece pairs.
hmm
And then I have like it's like a sling bag essentially. And this is sort of any observing session, I'm grabbing that as well because it has my flashlight in it, has my pen, my notepad. It has like a blower to blow debris off of an eyepiece. I can't remember. Like,
Okay.
oh, my reticle, my illuminated reticle eyepiece for
Oh yeah.
alignment, sort of stuff you're going to
Yeah.
use pretty much every session,
Yeah.
no matter what kind of observing I'm doing. I'm taking that. And it's got like a couple of extra eyepiece caps and plugs for, diagonals, like just miscellaneous stuff that you're probably going to need at some point. And the other thing that I'll mention with all of these cases that I have, they all have shoulder straps, so it's easy to put it on the shoulder, and then it frees up my hands to haul other stuff outside
Hmm.
or to the car or whatever.
Hmm.
So I find that that works pretty good for me. I like the hard plastic cases for the sensitive gear because then I can stack it in my vehicle or don't have to worry too much about how it's loaded because it's well
Hmm.
protected. And then what I do when I'm observing, especially with the eyepiece case, I keep the lid closed, not latched, but closed, unless I need an eyepiece just to help keep moisture out of there as well, as the
Hmm.
dew sets in at night. And I find that that works really, really well. Now, a couple other little things I do to help with my organization. I bought a label maker. So,
Hmm.
I just print out like the focal length of the eyepiece and then stick it to the eyepiece cap so that I
Oh
can
yeah.
easily see the focal lengths in the eyepiece case and grab them. And,
Yeah.
if you only have a few eyepieces, it's not a big deal. But,
Yeah.
with the bino viewing, I got many, many pairs in there.
Yeah. You got to
It
be
is
organized.
yeah, it is nice to not have to like pick up the eyepiece and read the side of it to find out what focal length it is. So
Yeah.
I find that to be quite a handy little. It's not an accessory, but just I guess a different approach there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my use case it's not exactly what I thought it was going to be. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that and it really has to do, and everything revolves around the observatory because it's sort of going to be my central observing spot, of course, because that's why I built it. However, there's a couple different ways you can build an observatory. One of them is if you've got a lot more money than I do, you can build like a proper building and put like a HVAC unit with air exchange and heating and a mini split, and basically you can just build yourself like a little cabin that you can climate control.
Mhm.
And so I didn't do that. Needless to say, my observatory, as you know, is like a shed, hey,
Yeah, essentially with a roof that rolls off.
with a roof that rolls off. Now, the advantage is if you go the less costly route, like I've done, and like that I would probably do regardless, because it's just sort of how I like to roll, is that you can't totally seal it. Because if you do and you observe, like I've been observing in the winter, as you know, we've been out here down to I'd like to say 0 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about minus 18 degrees Celsius. Um, and into the low minus 20s with the wind chill. You set that observatory up in the winter, and when you close it down, that thing, everything is just encased in ice, or at the very least a good layer of frost, eh? That's just the game.
Yeah, for sure it is. Yeah.
So if you can't heat that and evacuate that moisture in this very contained environment, then you need to make sure that that building will create some heat of its own and vent it. And so you need to design it with that in mind. And people who want to close their observatory right up, and I know like, and I recall, but correct me if I'm wrong, but when you had the pod, I think you said it would get very warm in there, and then you would also have maybe some challenges with not just warmth but humidity as well. Did you notice that when you had your pod being a building that closes up pretty tight?
Yeah. There's lots of humidity. Like humidity would pretty much reach 100% every night in there, and it would get pretty warm in the sun for sure.
Yeah. So when we were building this, and this is the thing that I discussed the most with my builder at a certain point anyway, is that you're taking a building and you're opening it up, you're filling it with cold, moist air. Sometimes you're depositing moisture all over the walls or ice all over the walls. Then you're going to seal it up and you want to walk away and forget about it. And he was like, that's going to destroy the building.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, exactly. We have to make sure it not only like the building is actually secondary. We don't want it to destroy the expensive equipment in it first. If it destroys the building, we can build a new building. But really ideally, it would not destroy either of those things. And so we made it so that it would vent quite a bit. So we put he said he put venting on it that would be the equivalent of what you would have in a 1,200 square foot house. Not that it looks that fancy, but that's the type of venting we have going on in there, and it works. We also have a semi-transparent roof, which is a little bit of a challenge in the summer because it can get a bit warm, but having it a little bit too warm and venting and being warm and extremely dry is the best of your worst case scenarios. Having it extremely wet and not able to vent, especially like in the winter and the damp months, is just a recipe for destruction, eh?
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. It's not going to survive.
Yeah, so this works quite well. I can open it up on a -12 evening on, many occasions. -12 seems to be like the temperature where I'm observing most at it in the winter, it seems, sort of in that -12 to -17 zone. And then I've had on virtually all of those nights so much frost buildup. You were in there once. I was wearing boots that had like a sand grit on the bottom of them, and you were like kind of sliding around a bit more than I was even comfortable with. I felt kind of bad about that, but as you know, like it can build up like significant ice in there, right?
Yeah, it was slippery that night for me.
Yeah. But the next day, by the time 12 o'clock rolls around, 90% of that ice is completely gone, evaporated. And within, if any remains within another, 3 hours, the rest of it that I would be concerned about is gone. It's all evaporated and has left the structure. So it tends to get very dry pretty quick. And even in a bad rainstorm, when I've had water ingress, because if you get driving rain for hours and hours, it's just going to come in. I did find a couple little holes in the wall too, that the water will get in around, and that's just inevitable. But that stuff drained out, and the whole building dried out again within a matter of hours. So that's good. I think that's better than trying to seal the whole thing up and then I see all these builds, or I read as many observatory builds as I could, and I would see a lot of people who would go through a lot of trouble to build these structures, and then the first post after they had first light and sort of enjoyed a couple nights and is, how do I control the humidity? I close this up and it's just full of cold, moist air. And then I go out the next day and everything is still dripping and it's going to destroy everything. And, a lot of people say, well, welcome to observatory ownership, ha ha ha, kind of thing. I'm like, well, that's kind of mean. Why don't we help guide people to build an observatory that's not going to do that? But anyway, because of that, because of the moisture and the fact that you do get a lot of moisture coming in, and then in the winter I will even get, like, if we get a huge pounding storm with, like, 6 or 8 inches of snow, you'll get like a layer of very fine powdery snow over everything, maybe like up to 2 or 3 millimeters or half a millimeter thick at the thickest, that you kind of have to go and you got to come out here and take care of it. So I come out here every other week or so and check on it and make sure that I sweep it out and get that moisture out of there. But because of that, it's not like I would just like take my eyepieces and just leave them on a shelf or something. So what I need to do, Shane, is I need to have it set up so that the stuff that doesn't really matter that much, like my alignment illuminated reticle eyepiece that I got on sale for $40 or whatever, my 2 inch to 1 1/4 inch adapters that I have a whole pile of that I've collected over the years, some of my lights, all that stuff, it can stay out there. that's totally fine. If something happens to one of those pieces, which is highly unlikely, it's not really going to impact things. And the convenience of having it out there is fine. But when it comes to like the more expensive eyepieces and some of the other pieces of equipment, either I have to figure out a way to really secure it in there, or just truck it down here or take it home with me and then bring it out when I come. So there's a little bit more of that than I originally thought. My original thought was, oh, you build the observatory, you put everything in it, and then everything's in the observatory. But it's not quite that way. Does that kind of help illuminate the problem?
Yeah, yeah, for sure it does.
Mm. So that's why I was kind of wondering what you did, because it's more like you need to be able to have that stuff either ready to come down, because if there is a big storm coming in, or I'm leaving it for more than a week or so, then I'm taking all that stuff out of there. Like typically now I'm out here, well, this week I'll be out here, for the next 7 or 8 days almost in a row. But if I'm gonna leave for 5 or 6 days, or more, then all that stuff is coming out, and I'm gonna secure it elsewhere, just simply because if a big storm or something rolled in, I would want it um, to be under like a fully, you know, proper house instead of an observatory that's probably going to have some water pour into it, and who knows where it's going to go. So that's why I was looking just to see. So I was curious what you said about putting a set of eyepieces, like your low power eyepieces, into one case, and then you have your binoviewer stuff in another. Is the binoviewer stuff in one case and then your doubles for your eyepieces in another case, or is that all one thing?
The doubled eyepieces are all in one case. The binoviewer itself won't fit in that case. It just takes up too much space. Now, I also, shockingly to nobody, I'm sure, is I overdid it a little bit on the pairs of eyepieces that I have. So I have kind of two sets of pairs in that case. I have like my preferred ones, which are like the super monos and some orthos, kind of the minimal glass stuff.
Hmm.
And then I have three pairs of wider field eyepieces that, if I just want wider field views. So I have quite a few of the minimal glass pairs, and then I have like 24 millimeter pans, the 14 millimeter Nikon navs, and 8.5 millimeter Pentax XFs doubled up. So if I got rid of those wider field ones, I could fit my bino viewer in that same case, but the way I have it now, I can't.
Okay. Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. The
Interesting.
nice thing with those cases is they are fully waterproof and, to a certain extent bomb proof. So like, if you left them in the observatory and you just latch them shut, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
what storm blows through, and a tornado could probably rip that thing up, and your eyepiece case would be somewhere and likely in good shape still.
I guess here's like a sub question for that, sort of like on a miniature scale, how we have the observatory, which can vent and make sure that moisture doesn't build up. Like if you have the eyepieces like that in those sort of cases, do you have to be careful about making sure that they're dry when they're going in? Because if they're locked in there like that, then you could get moisture like in that case with them, and that's kind of not going to do those eyepieces equally any favors, just as much as they would if I left them in the observatory exposed. Hey.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that's one of the reasons, like why I mentioned when I'm not in the eyepiece case, I close it, so I'm not letting dew in there.
Okay.
Now, if you get the pluck foam, that stuff doesn't really absorb moisture. So,
Okay.
I think you're sort of protected there. But typically, what I'll do after a night of observing is, and again, my use case is a little different. So if I'm at home or if I'm abroad, I'll leave the eyepiece case in my vehicle or in my house
Hmm.
unlatched so that it can breathe a little bit. And if there is any
Okay.
moisture, it's not really going to just be contained to the box and eventually, probably cause some mold. So I
Yeah.
do that pretty religiously. And, if I'm in the grasslands and we've observed there, sort of same thing. I'll leave the case open just a crack, during the
Yeah.
daytime, just in case there is any moisture.
Yeah. What I've been doing, don't pun intended, sorry. What I've been doing is after I observe, like when I observe Friday night. I just kind of left everything out, and I just flipped over like the cases, not quite 100% closed, and didn't like cap everything up. And then the next morning, like sort of mid-morning, I went up, capped everything up, and put it away. And I'm thinking that and to be honest, I didn't do that because I was trying to prevent dew or moisture or anything. I was just tired at the end of the session, and I had, pretty much two-thirds of the eyepieces I own out. And at night in the dark, and I keep putting my fingers on the eye lenses recently. I don't know why, but I was just thinking, well, this is just probably a better procedure. And then just as we've been talking, I was thinking, well, that probably is better for making sure that I'm not putting stuff away damp or wet anyway. So
Mhm. And you could get those little packs. I forget what they're called,
the
but they have,
silica packs or the
yeah, yeah.
dehydrating packs or whatever they're called.
Yeah, yeah, and you could stick those in the eyepiece case if you wanted. I don't know how long they would last because, there's like when you're out observing, there's usually a level of humidity out there as the dew
Yeah,
comes in. And if you're not latching the eyepiece case shut every time you're not using it, it may just,
they're just going to fill
yeah,
up.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think so.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know how
I wasn't
effective.
sure. I was going to ask you about those because I've seen people using them online and such, and just but I don't know exactly how they're using them. I know that sometimes what people will do when they're using these 365 covers is they'll put one of those up underneath, and they have like rechargeable ones where you get like a couple of the packs, and then you can take them and plug them in outside or whatever, and then sort of in the open atmosphere they discharge the moisture after takes whatever it is so many hours, and then you can swap them back. But then I've heard also like it kind of cuts two ways. You do have to be very careful with them because if what do they call them, anhydric or something, where they're absorbing moisture, but once they absorb so much moisture, then they reverse and they start giving it back. So if you don't monitor them and frequently take care of them, then you could end up with way more moisture at a certain point than you ever bargained for, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I have one of those it's a Farpoint desiccant eyepiece cap.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it came with those little silica packs. And, the idea is that when you're done using your telescope, you stick this thing
yeah.
into the
I've
eyepiece
heard of
holder.
those. I've been
Yeah.
curious about those. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it came with like a little Ziploc bag of like 20 of those little silica packs. And,
Mm.
when they go from, I forget, blue to pink, or
Oh
they
yeah,
change color to let you know that it's absorbed
yeah,
enough moisture and you should replace it now.
yeah, yeah.
Well, the 20 or so packs they sent all went bad, even in the Ziploc bag that they were shipped in. So I was
Oh,
like, I don't know how to use these things
oh,
effectively. So I still have that eyepiece cap, but I just don't use it because, like, my
oh,
thought was if I buy a bunch of replacement silica packs, are they all going to sort of expire on their own without me actually
yeah,
being able to utilize it? So I don't
yeah,
know. And I know some people use them. Like if you read about them online, some people are
yeah.
into
I've
it,
read a
but
little
not
bit,
not
yeah,
many
but I
are.
don't know any.
So,
Yeah,
and the other thing too is like I really don't think we have big humidity problems here. And if I'm
not
using
as
my
much.
telescope and it's damp, when I bring it indoors, I'll wrap it in a blanket, but like take the caps off so that they can breathe a bit. But because
Yeah,
it's wrapped, I don't really have to worry about too much dust in the air,
yeah.
settling on the optics.
Yeah. Yeah, it is easier for sure to keep things dry here. I feel like if this was, out east where I'm originally from, like you would just I mean, I don't know what they do, but it would just almost be impossible to get that observatory dried out if you did get it damp on some weeks. Some weeks it would take I'm certain it would take days, if not weeks, to have it dry. Versus here, like we were driving around yesterday, we had a lot of moisture here on Tuesday or whatever it was, a very late season snowfall of, I think they said if it was in the winter it would have been 20 centimeters of snow, but it amounted to 2 or 3 centimeters of snow because the ground isn't frozen and it wasn't really that cold. But certainly we had a lot of moisture come down. Hey.
Yeah, we sure did.
and it's hard to believe that within like 2 or 3 days of that, it's like seems like everything is just bone dry again. Things do really, really dry out here fantastically fast, which can be bad for fire and grass fires and stuff of that nature. But when it comes to like observing or whatever, it's pretty good. And there'll be a weekend or two or a few nights every summer where I would say it's pretty humid. But in general, we don't get that much humidity. I mean, nothing like where I'm from. Like where I'm from on a typical August evening, if the lawn isn't mowed and I go and walk across it, like I might as well just tread it through water. Like my socks will be soaked by the time I get across the lawn, kind of thing. If you go more than 20 or 30 feet and
Hmm.
back, you're pretty wet
Hmm. Hmm.
for sure. And I remember I went, I guess it's probably about 10 years ago now. I went back to the Star Party where I, sort of grew up, and holy smokes, like it got so humid. I took extra warm clothes because here, when you observe in the summer, it can get pretty cool. And so I took that level of clothing. And there was two things that I noticed is that one, I was still warm. I didn't even think it was cold. I didn't even have a hat or gloves or anything on. And I was still observing, and people were packing it in. They just weren't used to that level of cold at night, even in the summer. And these are experienced observers. Whereas I was just next level up,
Hmm.
because out here you just have to be more prepared for the cold. And the second is that I was losing observing for the dew. Like you had to pretty much at a certain point, I could have observed another hour, but I packed it in because there was not a single telescope left on the field that and I don't think a single eyepiece that was left out there that wasn't rendered useless because it was covered in this level of moisture. It was almost just like observing in a light mist is the only thing I can reasonably compare it to. Not every night is like that, but there's some dew, and what you're looking for is, when you're looking at the forecast here, I find a lot of the time here we're looking at wind or smoke, and there you're looking at what the dew point is and when it's going to move in. And that's a tricky one because it can be deceptively easy to decide, oh, it's clear we're going to go observing. And then you get out there and you can't observe. There's so much moisture coming out of the sky. And it just, sometimes the night it will just stick at the dew point and it just almost like rains the whole night. You try to observe and then it's just an exercise in frustration. We've had a few nights like that here, but I would say I probably have had as many nights here in the past 10 years as I've had out on the East Coast in a given year almost.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Yeah, big difference.
hmm, hmm. Well, yeah, that's kind of food for thought. I think I've got to get a few of those cases anyway, because sometimes it's just like you want to take gear with you and then ferry it up. And I think these soft cases are just not really doing it for me.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and a lot of these cases, like you if you wait for some sales, you can usually get pretty good discounts on them, particularly around Black Friday in November. But
Okay.
there might be some other points throughout the year too that they go on sale.
Yeah. Well, certainly I've bought an awful lot of these softer cases. So, I mean, I could just buy a case or two and then, yeah, sort of case things out as things go forward.
Well, and
Yeah.
just on the topic of these cases, 2 points. One is for me, the contents in these cases are worth a few dollars, and I want to protect them. So, at first, I wasn't a big fan of spending $100 or $200 on a case for my eyepieces or and accessories. But when I started to think about the value of those eyepieces and accessories, it sort of made sense. It's a cheap insurance policy in a way. And then the other thing to mention is like Nanook and Pelican, like the pluck foam that they use is quite high quality. Like when you open a case, you don't really smell anything. Like there's no gassing of the foam that's in there. But if you
Hmm.
buy some of the cheaper cases that have pluck foam, when you open it up, you'll notice sort of a chemical smell. And that's the
Yeah.
foam gassing off. And, I don't know if there's science or not, but there's certainly conversations on cloudy nights about how this isn't good for your optics, the coatings on your
Hmm.
eyepieces and things like that. So, that's just another point to consider here is it is like you're putting expensive gear in there. It's worth buying, the higher quality cases just so that you don't run into those scenarios. Or at the very least, if you're buying a less expensive one, like go to the store first and pop it open and see if you notice any sort of chemical smell to it. And if you do, you might want to stay away from that.
Okay. All right. That's sage advice. But the foam and the Nanook and the Pelicans, that's pretty good stuff. And I noticed that you
Yes.
don't use the foam. You're just using the dividers, or am I missing something?
A couple cases I've got the dividers, like the padded Velcro dividers, and then I have a couple cases where I have the pluck foam.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
And what do you prefer?
For eyepieces, probably the pluck foam. You can get a tighter fit around your eyepieces.
Hmm.
But for larger gear like bino viewers or like big 2-inch eyepieces, the adjustable padded foam isn't too bad at all. And then Pelican has another divider in it. I forget what they call it. It's sort of a harder plastic, but like you can cut it to size and it all connects really neat. So you can totally customize the
Oh.
interior, but it's not as padded. Now, I don't know if that matters if you have everything fairly tight so it can't move around. I've never tried that stuff out before, but it is a different option.
Hmm. Okay. That sounds pretty good. And yeah, I like the idea of the label maker. Like a lot of this stuff seems overkill or obvious, but when you're out at night in the cold, in the dark, and you're tired, and you're not, like, at least for me anyway, I'm not really looking to kind of play around with my gear and just like sit around looking at it. You can't really see it that well anyway. That it does require this sort of analysis and and determination of how you're going to sort it out and how you're going to store it and how you're going to use it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
What's
it's just one of those things that makes observing a little easier. You and I talk a lot about removing friction from the whole observing experience, and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
having something simple like your eyepiece is labeled like that makes it just a more pleasurable session.
yeah. And what's the alpaca on
Mm.
the list? Am I
Yeah,
read
that's
what's the
the sling that I referenced earlier.
Oh,
The
okay.
the brand is alpaca, so I just put that there
Oh,
to
okay.
twig my memory so I didn't forget to talk about it.
Yeah, I've been trying to get there's like a larger case you can get for sketching too. I've been trying to get my hands on that. You got to be a little bit careful with the sketching gear though, because like with the inks, they're not supposed to freeze.
Oh,
So
yes. Yeah.
yeah, you kind of got to watch out for that a little bit. And then I also see that you've got a book here
Yeah, I've been forgetting
referenced.
to mention this. So, when I was on the Light Pollution News podcast, I think we recorded about a month ago or six
Oh,
weeks
okay.
ago. I can't quite remember the date. The way Bill McGeeney does it is so he sort of facilitates a conversation and he has three guests on, I think, each episode. And one of
Hmm.
the guests that was recording when I was there was Stephanie Vermillion. And
Okay.
she's a writer and an adventurer and a traveler. And she writes a lot for Outside Magazine, but she
Oh.
just released a book called The 100 Nights of a Lifetime, The World's
Mm,
Ultimate Adventures After Dark. So I just thought, I haven't purchased it. I'm going to, but I thought
okay.
I'd mention it on our podcast because we're people that like to do things at night, and
Oh.
I think that this book will be super interesting because maybe there's things you can do at night when it's cloudy. I don't know, but it's sort of
Mm,
across the entire globe. What are some really neat things to do? One of the things for our region here, Chris, was see the aurora.
mm,
And I made a crack on the podcast that we see it so much, we sort
yeah.
of take it for granted, but it becomes a little annoying actually because it interrupts our observing sessions, which is not the right perspective because aurora is pretty
Yeah.
cool and pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, anyway, it looks like a very interesting book, and I plan on purchasing it.
I've been kind of flipping through the preview there. There's not too much, I think 10 or 12 pages they show. One of them is the place in Namibia where Mark Radici went, hey?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
was
yeah.
the host there, and where Alan Whitman, friend of mine, has sort of um, plowed some good furrows for those of us who want to go down and help operate the place. And
Yeah, it's something on my list that I would
mm,
like to do. And I mentioned it to my wife, and she's quite excited. In fact, I think she would love for us to do that this year if we could. But, we both have
awesome,
jobs, so it's a little difficult.
sadly,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, gonna take off for a month and hang out in the Namibian desert, and they're
Yeah.
gonna offer you some counseling supports, maybe. Sadly,
Yeah. No kidding.
really, Shane's he's having a rough time, I think. Yeah, that would be super cool to go down there and do that. Yeah, for sure. So, and yeah, that book looks super interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right. Anything else that we need to cover here?
I think that is all.
All right. Well, please share the show with other stargazers you know. You can send us your gear storage recommendations. You can send us your observations and questions to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.